right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're grateful that you took some time out of your evening tonight to hear what we have to say. My name's Tate. I'm one of the Prenda team members, and I will be watching. I'm helping with some of the back end, but I'll also be watching your comments and questions on social media. So if you have questions, please feel free to leave them. But I'm going to pass it over to Katie to get us going.
Awesome, thanks Tate. We're super excited to share what we have built and we've been working on for a long time. Prenda is more than just a school or curriculum or program. It's a mission and a movement that we are all super passionate about, and we're really excited to share that with you tonight. So a little bit about who we are, obviously. So we're going to hear tonight from Kelly Smith, our CEO and founder, and myself and Sarah Raybon. And we are super excited, very passionate. All of us have been instrumental in building Prenda pretty much from the beginning, and we're really excited. So a quick overview of what we'll do tonight. First, we'll hear from Kelly about the Prenda origin story, and then I will go over the Prenda model, what school is at Prenda and how we're different. And then we'll talk a little bit about COVID. We totally get that maybe a lot of you are here to get some answers about what Prenda is going to look like this fall in comparison to other educational options. We really want to invite you to have a really open mind about looking at Prenda more than just a COVID solution, but we've been doing this for a long time and way before COVID, and it's working beautifully and changing lives and helping families in a really wonderful way, pandemic or no pandemic. So as you listen to this, maybe I would just invite you to have a super open mind about what you really want and what's possible for your child's education in the long term, not just as like a temporary solution. So I will turn it over to Kelly for the Prenda origin story. Kelly.
Awesome. Feels like Peter Parker or something, like some sort of superhero thing. I wish that I could say that there was like magical toxic spiders or whatever, radioactive spiders. Is that what the story is? But instead, it's kind of an accident, actually, how Prenda Microschools came to be. I'm one of these people that always loved learning, but didn't feel maybe invited to care about my learning. So for most of my life, I think like a lot of people, I sort of viewed the obstacles and the requirements and the assignments and the tasks as kind of fixed, and I would sort of navigate that system with the most dexterity I could, really trying to minimize effort in a lot of cases. I had not, until later in life, really made a deliberate choice to learn and to be a learner. And you see that here as one of we learned two things. The place where we learned these two things was we actually started with an after-school computer programming club here in Mesa, Arizona. I had studied technical subjects, physics and nuclear fusion, and all of my jobs had at least some element of technology in them. I found myself using computer programming to make my life easier, to automate boring parts of my job and to be creative and fun. And so it was this tool that I wanted to share, not just with my own kids, but also with the community. I wanted to open this up and say, hey, anybody who wants to learn these things can come. Was not meaning at that point for this to be, a full-blown micro school model that would spread. But I wanted to hopefully help some kids learn. And one of the things that I saw in this process was the kids that would come in here, they would complain similar to the attitude that I think I had as a kid about school, which was, this is annoying, this is boring, I hate school, I'm not good at school. I just saw that all the time. These kids would have, behavior problems sometimes, and they would be getting in trouble, or they would totally disengage and not do their work. Maybe it was boring for them. Maybe it was they felt behind academically, and they found themselves kind of shutting off almost as a defense mechanism. But I got to know these kids. I got to see them, not just their heart as good humans that they were, but I got to know them as really talented brains, right? I got to look into their brain because they're solving computer programming challenges. And anybody who's tried programming, it's logical. There's a lot of thinking that goes into it. So I would sit there with these same kids that were complaining to me about how, you know, school was this and school was that. And then I would watch them solve problems that were much, much more difficult just because they wanted to. And I landed on this kind of finding that learning is a choice. Really seems obvious, but most of our effort, I think, as either parents or educators, has been in the past, maybe trying to force learning against someone's will. And the point is, can't really do that. In fact, point number 2, teaching is impossible. I'm being a little cheeky with saying it that way, but the idea is you can definitely help someone learn that makes the choice to learn. But if they haven't made that choice, you're very limited. And I learned that firsthand in the very beginning of Code Club. I was startled by some of this, right? The degree to which autonomy and agency and ownership mattered for these kids. And as I saw them kind of come to life and get this fire in their eyes, I want to build this project and I want to do this thing. I would catch 9-year-olds looking up how sine and cosine work, you know, studying trigonometry so that their cannon from their pirate ship in a video game would fire properly. Well, you know, trigonometry is junior year of high school for most people, but they weren't going to wait because they wanted to learn. You know, meanwhile, they're complaining about whatever it is they actually are supposed to do as part of their class. Just one example. So this Code Club is and was an important part of the story. After several years of doing this every week in the downtown Mesa Public Library, I started talking to my friends about what I'm realizing about education and what I'm learning. And fortunately, looking around, there's research that supports some of these ideas. And I'm not the only one saying these things. And there's really good evidence for a different way of doing education. And that got me a little bit excited. So like any self-respecting entrepreneur, I pulled my son out of school and 6 of my friends pulled their kids out of school. And we sat around the kitchen table in my house, this very table at which I sit right now. Here are my 7 kids. And we made a micro school. We didn't have anything planned. We didn't have a curriculum or any sort of requirements built. We just knew that learning is a choice and teaching is impossible. And the question was, how can we bring it to life and light the fire and help kids make that choice to care about learning? This is a day where we went with a neighbor and painted paintings in her backyard, which is very fun. But we did all kinds of things and the kids got to make the choices. And I was there as a guide and helper and coach in it all. But these kids, I look back on these days with fondness because this was the very beginning. We were able to get to a model that you'll learn about. And nowadays things are much more polished and still not perfect. We're improving and growing all the time, but you'll be able to see at least the kind of new modern incarnation of what started with really me and 7 kids and just a desire to learn and to have a great time doing it. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a picture of the background story. I feel very fortunate that I'm not the only one working on this. Prenda now has a team of over 30 people that are helping with this mission of empowering learners. And that's not to mention hundreds of learning guides that are really stepping up and sharing of their gifts and their home, and their energy and their time and their passion to open this up and invite children into their home and into their life to share their love and passion for learning. We made a 2-word mission statement. I've had people question this with an eyebrow raise. Is this, are you serious? Like, this sounds cliche. This seems like obviously any education company, and I've even had people say these words are overused and bland. We kind of threw all of those worries out when we chose this. We said, what are we really trying to do? And it really has to do with learners. We want a child and an adult for that matter to make that choice to be a learner. I'm going to learn things. And if you think hard about what a learner is, it's really crazy what's possible, right? That can be anything from plasma transport physics, which is what I was trying to learn as a graduate student, all the way to fixing the brakes on your car, which I'm still trying to learn as kind of a hack car owner, to watercolor painting, which I know Katie spends time on, to online marketing technologies that Tate's working on. And the list goes on and on. There's billions and trillions of permutations and possibilities. There's so much to learn, and we're born wanting to learn it all. If you watch a small child and a baby engage with the world, our brains want to do it. It's what we're built for. And yet somewhere along the way, this idea of becoming a learner, I think gets lost for a number of reasons. Prenda's whole mission is to latch onto that picture. You can be a learner. And I'm saying that to you as the adults, but I also say it to your children, to the kids. It's possible to be a learner. And when you get it, when you make that choice, and it's not just choosing, it's now practicing that and learning the skills and attributes of being a learner. When you get there and you're a full-blown learner, you have power to accomplish and to do and to be whatever you want in this world. And I really believe like it will lead to happiness for you and your family, but it will also benefit all of us in this world, because humans have so much potential just sitting in our brains and our hearts. And I want to unlock that for children. So hopefully you can hear a little bit of the why. This is my whole piece. You're going to learn about how and what here in a minute, but I wanted to start at least with why we're doing this, why we feel so strongly. And sometimes, maybe even we talk about it too much or it feels like overkill, but we're all about empowering learners. We're very serious about this mission, and you hopefully will see that, not just in what we say to you tonight, but as you get closer and meet some of our people and look into micro schools and look into this option for Prenda for this school year and beyond. Hopefully you'll feel this and see what we see in the power of being a real learner. That's it for me. I'm excited to introduce you guys to Sarah. Sarah's a mom and a rock star of education. She's been in and around the education space for a long time. And I think it's Sarah next. Is that right? Nope, it's Katie. Hey, Sarah, remember what I just said about Sarah, because that is true, all of those things. But right now, it is time to hear from Katie, who will tell us all about the Prenda model. Thanks, Katie.
So awesome. Thanks, Kelly. And I'm also like super eager to get to Sarah. So you're not alone. So I am super excited to share this with you guys, because it is something that we have built from the ground up, and it incorporates elements of what you're used to with education, where kids learn math and kids learn how to read and kids learn how to write, and that kind of stuff doesn't go away in this. But they also learn a lot of other things, and the way that we approach those subjects is very different, because we're not just trying to connect kids with math curriculum or reading curriculum. We're trying to change their mindset about why they should choose to learn, and trying to like ignite this fire that exists in everyone inherently, right? But we forget that, and it kind of gets dimmed and weak, and as we go through life, and we want to rekindle that and help every child remember that learning is a gift. And that's, a lot of people ask us about our name, Prenda, and in Portuguese it means gift, and then it sounds a lot like the Spanish word for learn, aprenda or aprender. So the idea, those two ideas taken together, is trying to communicate that we believe that learning is a gift, and that when you view it as a gift and an opportunity, and take advantage of that, like really open it up and see what's inside that gift, we're going to get a lot of really happy humans leading meaningful, purposeful, powerful lives. So that's why we created this. I just really wanted to start with that why, and the feeling behind this is all with that intent. So first thing you should know is that there are two options for Prenda. Prenda Micro Schools, which is a learning guide leading a group of 5 to 10 students, and it's in person, typically in home, but can also meet in public spaces like a studio or a library or any rented, like a church or a mall. We have lots of creative ideas around locations, very flexible where you want to do this. And then there's another option called Prenda Family. And this is where you want to do the Prenda program, be a part of the Prenda community, but you just want to, it's more of a homeschooling model where you are at home with your kids. So those are the two options. And then another layer beyond this is that each one of these also, we have a different approach that we take with K through 2 students, K through 2nd grade, and 3rd through 8th students. So we'll kind of differentiate those as we go, but just as you're listening, know, like I can have this in a small group where someone else is guiding, or I can become empowered as a parent and become a guide and host in my house, teach my own children and a handful of their friends if I wanted to, or I can just do this as my family alone. Okay, so our day, like people ask, like, what does a day look like for a Prenda kid? And it's 3 parts. We don't break the day up into like history, math, like all of these silos of subjects. We connect all of that into these 3 elements that are more purpose-based instead of like subject content organized. So the first thing we have is conquer, and then we get to collaborate and create. So the first thing we're going to do is dive into conquer and see what that looks like.
Actually, we have a video we're going to show, and then
Oh, great.
Then we'll recap these as we go as well.
Oh, okay, great plan. Thanks.
A Prenda Micro School is a new kind of educational environment.
When a child walks into their classroom, most of the time they'll start with Conquer.
In Conquer mode, when students come in, it's time to start Conquer mode. They get onto their computers, they work on their Conquer goals.
They go into Prenda World, that's the name of our software, and then they'll see their goals page.
Each student sets their own goal for their learning for that day.
And then they'll have a little meeting with their peers.
Where the kids will gather and say out loud what their goals are. This is what I'm going to accomplish today. Facilitated by an adult, but not driven by them. This is led by children.
It sets them up for a life of being able to know, like, when I set a goal today, I'm going to work my hardest to get to it.
So then they get going. They decide what they want to work on.
The kids will work at their own pace.
They can choose if they want to work in math first or reading first. This is where you see kids owning their education.
When a child is stuck, they'll get up and go find someone else in the class that does know the answer. They get out of their chair and help each other.
And then at the end, they have a little debrief where they talk about, did they meet their goals? And if they didn't, what could they do next time?
Sometimes they're really in the grips of, fighting this. I love those moments because this is where kids have to dig deep and they have to find that they truly are capable of overcoming repeated failure and accomplishing their goal.
At Prenda, the second part of our day is called collaborate.
This is a face-to-face group interaction that involves everyone.
Activities that we've designed specifically to enhance their abilities to communicate with each other.
Socratic discussion.
Debate.
Dive into a historical concept.
Typically, you have a student leader who gives everyone assignments, and then after everyone's had time to research their topic, then they come together and they have a whole discussion.
Sharing, debating, discussing.
The whole purpose of that period of time is them learning to interact socially in a healthy way.
To be able to communicate how they feel about something with compassion and respect.
Create mode is the final portion of the day.
They take all of the things that they've learned theoretically in Conquer and they apply them.
It's called Create because they're going to have a product at the end.
It's all project-based learning.
They've made a movie.
Writing a biography about someone that they know.
Or they've made a diorama.
Engineering apparatus to protect an egg when you drop it.
They can create their own project.
And then they can actually share it with other classmates. It helps create purpose in students' learning.
Our mission is empower learners.
That's what we get to focus on every day.
What gets me really excited is when I go into a micro school and I see kids who are happy.
It's been truly astonishing to see this fire light in the eyes of so many children.
The one most powerful evidence I see that what we're doing is working is that kids are happy to go to school.
Awesome, I love that. Okay, so in that video, we talked about the 3 parts, conquer, collaborate, and create. And I'm gonna dive in and give you kind of a closer, more detailed picture of what each period of the day looks like, okay? So the first area of the day is conquer. And we call it conquer for a reason. You see the little guy at the top of the mountain with the flag, he's conquered something. This is the time of day when kids sit down and focus on their mastery-based, individualized, self-paced curriculum. And we use a lot of technology in this area of the day, because what you see in a traditional classroom is that a teacher has many students, and all of those students are at different levels of understanding in whatever they're supposed to be learning, right? So a teacher can deliver a lesson, and then maybe that lesson is appropriate for maybe a third of her class, a third is bored, a third is confused. So what using technology does in this day, or in this part of the day, is helps each child learn in each subject at their learning frontier every single day. They're always challenged, they're always pushed, but not beyond what they're ready to learn. We use really powerful educational based technologies to assess and diagnose and find that child's gaps, that the individual pieces of the educational experience that child's maybe missed. And we ask kids to start where they are. One of our main catchphrases for this time of the day is never be afraid to be a beginner. We teach growth mindset and we help kids feel safe in this super connected small group where they can make mistakes. They can say, I don't know, and it's okay. They're not threatened by comparison. They aren't pressured to go at a certain pace. Like if they need more time to understand something, they're given that time. It's not even an issue. So those are kind of the key elements here. Let's move on to collaborate. So collaborate, the purpose of this is to get kids up, moving, looking at each other, talking to each other, listening to each other, interacting and solving problems together. So there's a whole variety of different activities that we ask them to participate in. And all of these things are initially demonstrated and taught by the guide the first few times. And then as soon as the kids are ready, that guide hands over responsibility to the student leadership. And these kids are asked to organize debates and Socratic discussions and history explorations and science projects and math application projects, all of these things that are so important to learn, but not just learn, but to apply and to use, and to use socially, and to really begin to understand deeply. So that's what we see in collaborate. And the key points here are that it's fun. Like learning should be fun. Learning is a gift, and learning is a social activity that humans are built to do. And when we put kids in these situations and give them a little guidance, they take off, and it's so exciting to watch them interact and make friendships and feel like they're part of a family. Like these kids, because there's not so many, and they just form such a tight-knit group. You see really cool friendships forming, teamwork, and people, all of the kids just learning how to apply their academics. So that's collaborate. Oh, and I will add about collaborate. You don't have to go back, Tate. But there's also like really interesting things built in. There's two of my favorites are game school and poetry tea time, where the kids are like performing poems and like just playing together. It's like really playful and fun, but also very purposeful. Okay, on to create. So create is the time in our day where we get our hands dirty and we solve problems that are super interesting, and it's all built off of our project-based learning library. So the kids will go into the software that we've built, Prenda World, and they can click on create, and then they'll see these different categories: discover, invent, perform, and become. And within each of those categories, they will find these projects or missions, like kind of these challenges. And in discover, they'll see things about science, technology, engineering, and math. Sorry, that's invent. Discover is history and geography and people and things like that. Invent is STEM, and then perform is art and crafts and performance and singing and all of those wonderful things that are so enriching to a life. And then become is kind of this like, who do you want to become? Like we help the projects in this category help kids project themselves into the future and think about what their life is going to be like and what they want their life to be like, and then kind of reverse engineer back to where they are now and think, how am I going to get there? How do I set a goal? How do I stay focused? How do I keep myself accountable? How do I recorrect, like if I'm going down a path that I think is really interesting, and then how can I shift gears and actually do something different and explore really widely, but then also have the time and freedom to go deep on things when it really fulfills their interests. My favorite become project is develop a habit of meditation. We talk about Tibet and monks and give them that kind of cultural perspective, and then they have to, for a week, meditate every day and then journal about it. So we really take the opportunity and create to really give the kids an opportunity to develop their whole person and to be exposed to a wide range of aspects of the world where they can explore, like, am I interested in dinosaurs? Am I interested in physics? Am I interested in art? You know, they're going to have these touches on all of these things. And then the invitation to create. And there's no grades here, and there's no time frames or due dates. It's like you can do something for a day, and if after a day, like, your interest in that thing is satiated and you want to move on to something else, great. But if you find something and you want to stay with it for like 3 weeks, wonderful. Like, dig deep. We're so excited to see what you're going to learn and create. And you can pick from our project-based learning library, or the kids also can make their own project and actually like do it themselves, but then submit it to us. And then we can add that project to the learning library for everyone. So it's really cool. Becomes kind of this like self-perpetuating community of kids doing awesome stuff. So that is Create. So this goes back to our mission, empower learners. And then this is kind of the answer to, like, how do we do that? What does it look like? So these are our core values. Start with heart, which means we see everyone as a person. Every individual child is unique and inherently valuable, aside from their test scores or grades or their strengths or weaknesses. Like, you are a human, you are deserving of love and attention and focus. And we love you no matter what. So the next one is dare greatly. Inherently built into every person is a innate ability to achieve. And we invite all of the kids to make big goals, to dare greatly, and to take risks, to not be afraid to fail, and to really have like a wide lens on their life. Like, what could I really accomplish? And to really learn to believe in themselves and to do hard things. The next one is figure it out. This goes really deep into empowerment, because what we found in Code Club, right, as Kelly was telling the story, is that I don't know if you covered this part, Kelly. I'm going to like continue the story. What Kelly found in Code Club was that when he started a code club in a library and paired those kids with an individual who knew a lot about computer programming, that was fun for a while, but then those code clubs kind of petered out. But when he when he organized a code club and just had a librarian who didn't know about coding, those code clubs grew and grew and grew and were like really healthy for a long time, because in that environment, there was no adult in the room that knew the answer or that was going to give them the answer. So it was on the kids to figure it out. And that's what we mean by figure it out. It's not like, nah, go figure it out, like we don't care about you, but like, we believe that given the opportunity, you can figure this out. And when you see those moments of that confidence that comes when a child like struggles and succeeds, it is super magical. The next one is foundation of trust. And that kind of is self-explanatory. Like, we trust kids, we trust guides, we trust that parents are experts in their children, and we listen to them, and we appreciate any input and feedback. And we trust that everyone has the child's best interest at heart. The last one is learning over comfort. And this kind of harkens back to what we were talking about in Conquer, where in your journey, we call it climbing the mountain. When we coach the kids in this understanding, this mindset, we kind of set up this analogy where there's a mountain, and then on the other side of that mountain is their future self and everything that they want their life to be and everything that they want to become. And then when something's challenging, it's like, yeah, that's a mountain in the way of becoming or achieving like those things that you want. It's not something that someone else has set out for you, but it's something that you've thought about and are passionate about. And that purpose and longevity helps the students make the decision to learn. And even when it's hard, like, they're going to be uncomfortable. That's like the whole point of being at your learning frontier. Like, if you're at a frontier, you think about that word, like, you are challenging new problems. You are probably exploring land that's new to you. And that's where we want them to be in their learning every single day. They're learning. And if they're learning, that probably means that they're uncomfortable, but we put them in a super supportive environment where that discomfort is actually praised and admired instead of shamed, or, like in a typical, even in the adult world, everyone feels like I need to hide it if I don't know something. I never want to look like I'm wrong or that I don't know. So we take that and totally blow it out of the water, never be afraid to be a beginner, and just full steam ahead, let's learn things. So that's learning over comfort. All right, and we're going to turn it over to Kelly to talk specifically about some COVID-19 things.
Great, thanks, Katie. And I'm sorry I didn't announce you properly at the beginning. You did a great job. It's so fun to hear Katie talk about this model. I feel like I learn from her every time. By the way, we believe in learning over comfort for ourselves too. So I'm trying to get better at webinars. It's one of the things I'm working on. COVID, a lot of people are asking questions. I'm sure you've heard some of this. I think I get somebody's texting me, you know, regularly from various neighborhood Facebook groups, and we're very grateful that there's a lot of discussion about Prenda as an option here. Like Katie said, we feel really strongly, hopefully you've seen that. We just spent 30 minutes just talking to you about the philosophy and the model and why we do it the way we do it. So hopefully you see all of that as you're kind of thinking about this and making decisions. But given that, we do owe it to you to go into how this is working. I think the main thing to recognize about Prenda, as opposed to a traditional school or kind of a bigger school, is you can imagine one giant lever that you have at a big school district, or even a single school with hundreds of kids. There's kind of this one choice, like, are we going to be really, really safe, potentially limiting some options and some possibilities for the kids, or are we going to be a little looser on safety, which is terrifying, and but open up some of those like interactions and some of those things. And no matter where you put the lever, people are mad at you. So as I go into this and talk about it, I want to just be really clear that we are not out there to be like harping on anybody. We hope that we'd invite you to share with us a tone of just grace and generosity in all of these conversations. There's a lot of people just trying the best they can in a difficult spot. So starting there, what about Prenda? So Katie talked about two models. The first one is Prenda Family. This is, like she said, it's homeschool with help. And we give you everything you need to run our model just with your own kids. Obviously, this is, if you have people in your life that you're worried about, if there are concerns anywhere, like this is a great option for families. So you just do our model. In contrast to kind of buying a curriculum, yes, you get curriculum. Yes, there's a computer, but we also wrap you up with the training and support, so you know what to do and how to do it. And there's other people kind of in the boat with you. And this has been really fun. We've had some of this happening over the last couple of years here in Arizona, but really as we look at going forward, we're at almost a launching point for kind of a new tightly defined or tightly supported and defined version of Prenda Family. So it's not going to be exactly what you see in the micro schools, but it's based on everything Katie just gave you is still true here. The goal is to empower kids as learners, and even where you're not physically in person to do a Socratic discussion or do hands-on science experiments together, we're going to do as much as we can to try to connect families virtually and support interaction, because we really do believe that humans learn better when connected to other humans. It's core to how we're operating. So even in a family situation like this, which is safe from a virus perspective, there's still options to do this and to get some of those links and community and connection. So that's Prenda Family. Hopefully you see that as an option. Some of you might be saying, okay, but I'd prefer to do a micro school. So that's the next one I want to talk about. The idea here is flexible. So it's not to say that safety's out the window. What we've found as we've kind of gone out to our community is that there's lots of kind of differing ideas. Obviously, we're listening to all of the mandates and requirements from government and the guidelines from CDC and all of these things. Because we're talking about groups of 10 or fewer students and meeting in a home, this is falls within kind of responsible, reasonable things for public health and overall compliance. So micro schools are allowed. The question is, what should a micro school be, or what is it going to look like? And what's beautiful about this from our perspective is they don't have to all be the same. So one of the things we've been working with is trying to help our micro school communities. You imagine a small group of 10 families having a community, and there's some decisions to be made. We made a few of them for you, and this is based on guidelines that CDC gave us. Stay home if you're sick, move to remote if a case happens, everybody should be washing hands, sanitizing, etc. And then just needs to have a lot of communication. This goes back to the core value of foundation of trust. It's just really important, especially in times like these, that there's trust between the guide, who's often hosting this micro school, and the students and the families that are connected. So these are the kind of every micro school does these things, but you have, we get specific questions on the right side of the screen. You have things like face coverings, and are you going to do temperature readings, and how are you going to enforce kids interacting with each other and staying apart from each other, and try to do plexiglass or recess. There's lots of detailed questions. What we're actually excited about is not having to dictate that for everyone, right? So allow each group. We're trying to help facilitate that conversation, but it's really going to depend on the comfort level of the group, right? So if you have, for example, somebody that's just like, it's really, really important to me that we take these precautions, that can kind of come, and there's a selection mechanism that can happen there where those people can find each other. We have a team that's eager to answer your questions. Probably a good time to say, several of you have probably reached out to us, and it seems like we're not eager to answer your questions. I promise we are. We want to talk to you, want to help you. As you can imagine, this is a pretty busy time. There's a lot of people like you guys out there asking all the right questions, doing the work, and we're grateful that they've reached out to us, but it's all happening at once. And so we are a little bit backed up, but I promise we're going through them fast and even adding people quickly to be able to get to you and talk to you about your questions. So hopefully this is like a clear picture for you of how micro schools can still work. One of the questions we're getting is start dates. Prenda actually never dictates the calendar for you. So each micro school already is allowed to choose their calendar. You're starting to see now, I think the governor said, all the brick and mortar schools, August 17th, with sort of a question mark after that of what happens and is it going to be Labor Day? What we would say is, I would expect some of the micro schools to kind of just stick with that because maybe they have siblings in other schools or something like that. But I would also guess, I mean, we have micro schools meeting, today. So there's micro schools happening all the time, and we're not going to tell you these are the days and times that you have to be there. So part of the process of kind of forming this group is you get to make those decisions and find what works for you. So yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I will not answer the question of when we start. The answer is we start when your group is ready. So I guess I did answer the question. All right. You see, I'm working on getting better at these. Okay, now hopefully I got the basics out, but I know there's probably a lot more questions. And so please just type them in the chat. Tate's super good at monitoring this and keeping us on pace. And we'll spend time. Sarah's going to get us going on some details. So there's probably those of you who are interested in understanding specifically what's going on. Sarah's going to walk through that, and then we can just get into any questions that you guys have. So everything I said about Sarah, remember that, because now is your chance.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be a part of this. Prenda has been an amazing adventure for me. It's been exciting. We'll talk a little bit about the micro school details. If Tate, you want to just roll one slide up. Okay, so Katie originally said we kind of have these two paths. We have our K2 model, which is our kindergarten to second grade kiddos, and then we have our 3rd through 8th grade kiddos. Ideally, that 3rd through 8th maybe is broken up to 3rd, 4th, 5th in a micro school, maybe 6th, 7th, 8th. I know we're really trying hard to kind of create this cool new experience for our middle school kids. We know that's kind of a different kind of time, so we're really working on that. But ideally, broken up like this. We do have some occasions where they're blended. If just the community and the area, it needs to be a 2nd, 3rd, 4th. It's a little bit different, but we just try to make it happen. We want this to just reflect the community and the needs of the community. So in our K2 micro schools, very similar day, conquer, collaborate, create, exactly that. But the kids are not only doing their academic time on the Chromebook, they also have a phonics grammar workbook that we've created ourselves. The kids are working in that for part of the day. And then also some other manipulatives and things like that, really focusing on learning to read and all of that good stuff. So we've got focus on art and music. It's just our K2 model is just an amazing experience for those kids. So we've got some fun. I love going into a micro school and watching those little kindergartners do show and tell as they learn how to interact with each other and ask appropriate questions. And it's a lot of fun. So 3rd through 8th, we do use the best, as they've talked about. We use the best of what the online curriculum is that we have to offer, or that's out there right now, in terms of, we use Lexia for our English language arts, Khan Academy for math. We have other things too, Dreambox and other things. But lots of great stuff goes on in our micro schools. Like we've talked about, minimum of 5 kids to have a micro school, maximum of 10 kids in a micro school. We've mentioned that it's typically 4 days a week. It can look differently depending on the needs of that micro school and those families. But typically for our K2 kiddos, it's 16 hours in the micro school. And then our 3rd through 8, it's 20 hours in the micro school. That hours at home you see right there, it's not homework. The kids always get really excited when I say no homework for Prenda kids, but that's what we say bonus time. And that's something that the parents log at home for their kids. It's anything that parents, you feel is educational for your kids. We feel parents know best. We've got some amazing Prenda kids doing some really cool things, falconry and metalwork, and just some kids that are interested in some amazing things. Our littles, we love it to be reading. We just really feel like that's important, but the sky's the limit in terms of bonus time. So that's what kids do at home. So that's what the typical micro school looks like. And we've talked about them being in homes. Typically, we do have some in churches and community center, just whatever's out there. Be creative in coming up with a space. It just has to be a comfortable space for kids to learn in. So find a micro school. We've got an amazing website. So if you go to our website, we have a map on there. You can see where we have micro schools around the state. Gosh, we have just, things are exploding right now. As you can imagine, we have over 1,100 kids enrolled in Prenda. So there's a lot of options as far south, gosh, as Sierra Vista, as far north as Kingman, and everywhere in between. So check the map out. If there isn't a micro school in your area, we can help you get started. So we definitely go to the website. You can talk to somebody. We've got a great team that is there to help you and answer all your questions. And then, okay, this is kind of my favorite part. Or, you know what? If you're sitting here thinking, this is awesome, I love it, this is just, blowing my mind and I want to be a part of it, you can become a guide. So we call our teacher, we don't call them teachers, we call them guides. And that's because they're not at the front of the room like Kelly's talked about or Katie's talked about, delivering content. They're there to encourage, support kids as they become empowered learners. So you get all of the tools you need to help kids do that. The software, the curriculum, the materials, it takes all that pressure off. So if you're a passionate adult who just loves this idea and loves this philosophy and supports this mission, join us. We are always looking for micro school guides. We don't have an education requirement because, like we said, we're not delivering content here. We are just passionate adults who love learning. So if that sounds like you, you can become a guide. You make an income and literally make a difference in a child's life, literally life-changing, like you see there. I mean, and then that is not, really, that is not an overstatement. So you don't need to know all the answers. Guides are just there to encourage and support kids. So keep in mind that it will change your entire life. I mean, Prenda has changed the way not only I think of my kids' education, but it's changed the way I parent. It's changed the way I communicate with my kids. It's just get ready to have an exciting adventure when you join Prenda. And we're just so fortunate to have this as an option for our families here in Arizona. So if this sounds like something you're interested in, go to our website, talk to somebody more about becoming a Prenda guide, if not just for your own kids, but just for at a micro school. So Questions. This is, I think, my favorite part. This is my favorite part. And I have to do this part. This is my favorite thing. Tate knows it's my favorite part because I say the very first question everybody asks is, how much does it cost? And I think what is so cool about Arizona and our regulatory structure and all of these amazing options we have is that Prenda is offered as a tuition-free model, tuition-free option here in Arizona. It's not like that in other states where parents have to pay for a Prenda type type education.
Yes, Sarah, yet someday we'll get it to other states.
We will, but it's a tuition-free option open to all kids. And I just really love that about Prenda. And it's so.
Our goal is definitely to make it available to as many kids, and especially kids who need it most.
For sure.
Yes, that was actually, so we'll open this up for questions now, which we don't have to wait till now because it's been very active, and we're very appreciative to those guides and parents in the chat that have been commenting and replying to most of the questions. So we'll try and touch on most of them that are coming through here. One of which was, what about other states? As Kelly and Sarah just mentioned, it's in the works. If you have, some connections that you think could help us out, send them our way. But
Tate, I will just add there, because we've seen a large increase in traffic from other states. We worked pretty hard over the summer, and really starting in March through kind of the beginning of COVID, we recognized that this was going to be a need, and so we're working on a low cost private pay. Our goal there again is to make this accessible, but it's hard because we've got to balance. There's costs and there's materials and there's things that we're working on and paying for software developers and content curriculum. So so you'll get to learn probably the best way to start if you're not in Arizona and you want this immediately is through our Prenda Family option. So we talked about that a couple of times tonight. Prenda Family is you and your kids at home. Even if you're sure you want to do a micro school, I would say start there. We've got that tightly built, and then you can pool with other families that are doing it, or convince your neighbors, your sister to do it with you, and you can have a group of Prenda families. We saw a lot of this happening during COVID, and it was really cool to see people, even in varying geographies, but they would do the model at home. They'd do their Conquer goals, and the kids are making all this progress in math and reading. But then they would put that all away and get on together with Zoom and interact with another class and share things, with each other. And even though that wasn't physically in person, like I said earlier, we feel really comfortable with groups of 10. So if you can get multiple families together near you, we're starting to hear a lot of this happening in California and other places anyway. And so we'd love to just be a tool and a resource to make that really easy for you.
Awesome. And I will add to that, if you are interested in Prenda Family, tomorrow night at the same time, so 7 p.m. Arizona time, we will be doing an info session just like this, focused on Prenda Family. So if you're interested and want some more specific Prenda Family information, please join us tomorrow night. It'll be a great resource for that. So now we'll get to some of the questions you all have asked. The first one here, and maybe for Katie, Gail asked, do you work closely with the parents? And can you talk a little bit about our model regarding parents?
Of course. So that's a huge push and a huge focus for us right now. We absolutely believe that parents are the experts in their kids. You know them best, and you also love them most. So we listen to you. And it's sad, but also really makes me feel so happy to be a part of Prenda when I hear all of the stories from parents about how they've just not been heard. And that's one of my favorite parts about Prenda is we hear you and we get it and we trust you. So as far as the model and parents, the interaction there, as soon as you get started with a guide, you'll have an orientation meeting. In my mind, I call them GPS meetings because guide parents and students sit down together and they ask the question, where are we and where are we going? So there's this community immediately built around helping this child become successful. And our model is really focused on helping that child make choices and make goals and own their own education. But we also realize that kids need help doing that, and they need adult direction and help. A kind of a good analogy is of the kid is like a building, and then guides and parents are like scaffolding to kind of support the building as it's growing. And then like as soon as the building is stable and it's working, like the scaffolding is taken off so you can really see the beauty of the building. And so guides and parents work super closely. I always tell parents, like, the number one thing you can do to improve the education of your student in a Prenda micro school is communication with that guide. And that guide's being trained on our end to reach out to you and talk to you and to help you understand where your child is and what the next thing that they're going to learn is. And not just like the guide reporting that, but like empowering that student to know that and to be able to communicate that to you. It's funny when you hear stories about kids coming home from Prenda that have been in other models, kind of like the difference between like, what'd you do at school today? Or like, how's school? And like nothing and fine, versus after a Prenda day, there's like so much communication, so much joy and excitement that happens in those conversations. It's so fun to watch. Trying to think of anything else. We're working really, really hard to help you as a parent have access to your students' data. And by data, what I mean is their academic progress, like day to day. So they come into their conquer mode and they make a goal to maybe move 1% in Khan Academy, or accomplish like 3 lessons in Zern, or any goal that they set out to do. And our goal this year, something we're really focused on, is helping you have a parent portal where you can go in and view, where is my child in math? Where are they behind? Are they ahead? Are they on pace? Like, what are they learning? What are they struggling with? So you can have, you don't have to wait for like a quarterly or semester like report card that gives you just like a judgment comparison based, summary, essentially. Like, you could be in there and really seeing what they're learning. Did that answer the question?
Yes, more than answered, I think. So maybe, and Katie, a lot of these might be coming your way. We'll see. We'll try and spread out, as I know you all can answer. I know you touched on this a little bit, but not sure if this question came in after. So I'll ask it again from Lauren. She says, are the activities given to the guides, or is it up to them to create them?
It's all given to the guide. So we make every effort to have that guide role not involve any sort of like lesson planning or things like that. Like, what we recommend to guides is that they build like the weekly schedule with kids. And so for those collaborate activities, we have a list of 8 to 10 like kind of patterns, and you learn each pattern, and then the kids fill those patterns with the content. Like, you might do a history exploration, and for this example, like there will be a student leader. He will pick a topic from history, or like a time period, a person, an event, an invention, something from history, and share that with the class. And then they'll break out, and one student will be in charge of like learning about like the agriculture in that time and place, or the economy, or the trade. And then they'll all make slides, and then they'll come together and present, and they'll share what they learned and things like that. So it's not us saying like, here's the lesson plan. It's like, here's the pattern and the framework for it. And then the kids fill it with their interests. So you're not going to be like lesson planning day after day, like it's just setting the schedule. And there's a little more work up front, as you have to we train each guide to understand what those activities are and what they entail. And then, there's some student training as well, as they come into this new learning environment, where you kind of transfer that to them. Like, this is what a debate is, and this is like appropriate behavior and how we talk to each other and how we listen to each other in a debate. So you transfer that, and the goal is over time that these classes really become run by the students. But the guide is always there to guide and encourage and help kids find their intrinsic motivators, and to ask them questions and really be in the learning with them.
Awesome, thank you. Sarah, I think this one could be for you. Lots of questions, and some of our most common questions we always get regarding IEPs, special needs. Can you talk to how we deal with those situations?
Absolutely. So another wonderful thing about Prenda is that we embrace kids with learning differences. That is not something that we shy away from. We welcome those families. We have open and honest conversations. We have a team that is dedicated to student success. So, and a team that absolutely knows their stuff when it comes to special education. So that is no problem for us. We want your kids to be successful and empowered. The kind of cool thing about an IEP is that it's a lot about accommodations. So in the Prenda model, just naturally, those are happening for all of our Prenda kids, right? The smaller class sizes, the more one-on-one, more time to complete assignments, maybe some, breaks for a snack, or, to wiggle and, get all that energy out. So a lot of those things happen naturally in Prenda, which is awesome. But if there is a service that is needed, like maybe your child has speech need and in the district school is maybe being seen by a speech pathologist, we can help facilitate that through our charter partner. It would happen remotely, but we do have a team that is able to kind of work with the parent to make that happen, work with the parent and guide. So we embrace children that have learning differences and love those kids and want to see them be successful, and in Prenda as well. So.
Thank you. Maybe Katie for this one again. In starting Prenda, do you need to carry insurance, and how is that funded?
You do carry insurance as a guide. The way that works is we have a Prenda policy that has all of the specifics in it, and we actually fund most of it. And then you as a guide fund a small portion of it. And you can even, we can withhold that from your first few paychecks. I think it's like $300 maybe total for the whole year, and then we pay the other part of it, and we can work with you on when those payments happen. But yeah, that's the short answer.
Thank you. This question maybe for Kelly. Mercedes asks, how diverse are our micro schools?
Yeah, great question. One of the things about the way these micro schools happen is that they're inherently organic. So the micro school itself, each one, is really a function of people that have chosen to be close to each other. I mean, in a way, it's the same thing as, public schools where people move into a neighborhood and then they go to the school. It's just happening at a smaller level. They also tend to align around, we have groups that dance together. So there's a bunch of families that know each other from dance, and they'll get together for a Prenda micro school. So each group is often shares some, common theme. Now that doesn't mean kind of always the kind of traditional, distinctions. So, we're talking about race and background and socioeconomics. You typically see people gathering together though around we know each other through church, or we know each other through this thing inside of a micro school. So that's one answer. Now the big Prenda, if you now zoom out and look at all the Prendas, this is my favorite thing about it, is each one of them is so different from each other. So because those communities, those little organic communities, are all so different. And so now to sort of see this at scale, Katie and Sarah and I get to look at this all the time, is, everybody bringing their own gifts. And I think, Katie talked a little bit about how we give the guides everything they need out of the box, but we also invite participation. Our content is constantly being refreshed by the people that participate, even to the point of students, as they get far enough in their progress with doing the projects we give them, they actually get a chance to create their own projects. So what we're starting to see is diversity in a beautiful way that's potentially a lot more holistic even than how most people talk about it, in that you have lots and lots of differences between people. And so you get all of it, and you get to see it all at scale. And that's showing up in our content, showing up in our group, remote activities. And when we go do a field trip together with multiple micro schools. I mean, some of these things are a little different in a COVID world, but assuming we're able to do this in the future, you get lots of chances then for each micro school inside of this zone where like we all know each other, we're really close, but now we go out into the world together and experience things and people that are different. And so it's definitely a value for us. It's something we really, like Kate talked about, we see humans, all humans, as infinitely valuable and capable of greatness. And so then the question is, how can we create these environments that will empower these kids to be learners and understand, among other things, differences between people.
Thank you, Kelly. We'll go back to you, Katie. Rachel asked, how do we make sure kids are meeting grade level requirements? And she also asked, and I'll put it with that, is do we do standardized testing?
Such a good question. Okay. Let me take the testing one first, and then you're going to have to remind me about the other part right now. I'm blanking. Just started thinking about testing. Yeah. Okay. What's that?
I think
standards. Yes. Okay. Thank you. So for testing, if you are charter enrolled with our charter partner, we ask that your children take the end of year test. If you are accessing Prenda via ESA funds or a private pay model out of state, you don't have to take those tests. You're independent from that. As Prenda, we are super focused on mastery-based learning and not just exposing kids to content that is someone else has decided like matches their age, right? We want to know what the child knows and then ask the question, how can we help them understand the next thing that they're ready to learn? So this year we've done testing various ways in the last few years, but this year we're rolling out a new approach where when you enroll in Prenda, your students will have the opportunity to take an adaptive diagnostic test in math and reading. And what that means is that instead of just taking a static test where like, I'm a third grader, here are the third grade questions, and then I am compared to my peers, it changes based on that student's understanding. So you get a question right, you get a harder question. If you get a question wrong, you get an easier question, and it adapts. So it finds for each, not just like math or reading, but like for each topic within those subjects, like, do you understand base 10? Do you understand addition and subtraction? Like really looking at it granularly. And then our whole goal is to curate that student's academic path based on what they actually know and what they need to learn. So we use that as a tool to match them to, we don't just like have one math curriculum. We look at a variety of different tools and we talk to you and think like, what kind of learner is your child? What have they succeeded with in the past? Like which of our options that we've curated is a best fit here, and then they can run with that for a while. And if it's not a best fit, then we can change it. So there's a lot of individualization here, a lot of options. All of our curriculum is standards based. So built into our programs is kind of this, like most of them have some sort of like visual display almost. It's like a map of, if like you're in third grade, like here's where you are compared to like the end of third grade and the beginning of third grade. But like our kids, we share that with them in most cases, unless there are kids that aren't ready to emotionally handle that. Like we're really sensitive around that. But for the most part, we share this data with kids and we ask them the question, here's where you are. Where do you want to be? Like you have the opportunity to set the pace here and to decide what you want to achieve. So while all of the content and like path that they're pursuing is standards aligned, the idea that like all 9-year-olds are doing third grade work or whatever, the alignment like isn't really super important to us. We look at it granularly, individual by individual, and want that child learning at their personal learning frontier every day. So we do that diagnostic test to help us match them to curriculum that will serve them and to like where they should start in that curriculum. So we don't waste a bunch of time figuring that out. And then we take that test again at the end of the first semester and at the end of the year to answer the question, is what we're doing for this kid working? And you as a parent get full transparent access to that data. The student gets it too, and the guide gets it. And we use it to actually like inform our decision-making, not just compare kids to other kids. Did I hit everything that I was supposed to hit?
I think so. Closely related, and not sure if you have anything more to add to this one specifically. But it was asked, Amy asked, how does Prenda bridge into high school and high school levels of, math, science, English, anything beyond that of, making sure they're learning at that correct level?
Totally. So Prenda is only K through 8th right now. We are going to build high school. Give us a few minutes to get to that. But we will get there. If you are doing a private pay option though and have older kids, you're totally free to enroll them because of that mastery focus. Like when a student gets to 8th grade in Khan Academy, we don't say, great, you're done learning math. Like they move on to 9th grade and 10th grade and algebra and pre-calculus. Like they just keep running, So you can have a 6th, 7th, 8th grader doing work that is well above grade level, because they're ready for it, which is a really great skill. So when a student, most of our curriculum goes through high school, but when it doesn't, we have kind of like a bridge plan. It's like, okay, you finished, you like beat this curriculum essentially, you got to the end of it. Now here's your next challenge, your next path, if that curriculum in and of itself doesn't continue. So they're always going to be pushed and encouraged and invited to make big goals and dare greatly.
Yeah, we have a lot of kids who are working on high school curriculum, even though they're 6th or 7th or 8th graders. I think part of it too is there's always this concern of what's the transition. We can get you all of the kind of standard paperwork and documentation, so you're allowed to make that transition. It ends up being fine. We have lots of people do it. The other question is, are the kids ready? And the feedback that we're getting, including one of my kids that has made that transition, it's doing just fine. They're able to, once you get to empowerment as a learner, it's actually kind of depends on the class, obviously, but it can almost be boring because now you're used to being able to kind of like run with something all the way. And if instead you have this kind of rubric and it's like, oh, this is what I have to do to get an A, we would encourage the kids to look at it and say, choose what you want to learn and learn that. If you have a project given to you as a high school student that, doesn't like drive you or doesn't motivate you or doesn't engage, that's okay. Like still do what's required and get an A, but then take that extra energy and allocate it somewhere else. So you want to see these kids, taking whatever their hobby is. You see them diving into music, diving into computer programming, some of them starting businesses. And there's lots of things that, a child can do that's well outside of the kind of the single dimension of GPA.
Great answers. I think, Sarah, this one could be good for you. This is from Lisette. She asks, do we have to submit an affidavit with the state, like if we were homeschooling when we register, and can we apply for ESA funds through Prenda?
So I'll break that up there. So no, you would not be filing a homeschool affidavit. We are under kind of a virtual learning model. So you do not need to file a homeschool affidavit. Also, ESA funds. Yes, we do have families that pay for Prenda as a private school model. It looks exactly the same. It's our micro school as our other kiddos, but they're able to pay for Prenda pay Prenda tuition. And it's $5,000 a year for micro school enrollment with an empowerment scholarship account. So, and if you don't know what that is and you're interested to learn more, happy to reach out through our social media, and I'm happy to get back to you on that. But we do have families that are taking advantage of that program through the Department of Education. You would need to apply for the Empowerment Scholarship account through the Arizona Department of Education. That's their program. You'll just be able to use the funding to pay for Prenda. And we are listed in Class Wallet, so you're able to use your ESA funds to pay for Prenda that way.
Thank you. Katie, I know you touched on this a little bit, but maybe a little clarification on it. Lauren asked, during CREATE, is a child able to do their own things, or is the whole group doing the same project?
Super good question. So in the K through 2 model, it's like, this is our CREATE activity, and it's more guide led, and they do it as a whole group to have that support and interaction. But as soon as they get into the 3rd through 8th model, they pick their own project, and they can choose to work individually in pairs or small groups. We do see some classes as they're like learning about CREATE mode to kind of do it as a whole class. for a few times so that everyone kind of gets their feet wet, but then everyone's like, oh, this looks interesting to me, and this looks interesting to me, and they just kind of like run.
Thank you. Rachel asks, do you have to buy a Google Chromebook or can you use a different brand of tablet or computer?
For me, you can use any computer you want. We when you sign up with our charter partner, we issue you a Chromebook. That's kind of the path that we've chosen. But all of our softwares work on any computer. And if you're doing like a private model, like, then we ask that you provide your own computer, so you can just choose whatever it is.
All of our softwares work on any computer. Sounds a little drastic, so I just want to clarify that our old computers, any modern.
Okay. I meant any computer that was alive and well today. Yes, totally true.
Thank you. Christina asks, and I know, Sarah, you touched on some of the hours, so not sure if much more is needed on this, but she mentions that public schools have, a mandated number of days they have to instruct for. What about Prenda? Do we have a day requirement?
Well, those hours that kind of I outlined in the beginning, that the 16 hours plus the bonus hours for our K2 and the 20 hours plus the bonus time for our 3rd through 8th graders, we make sure we follow all the requirements there as mandated by the state. So it is considered a full-time school. So it does meet the requirement for a full-time school education in Arizona. So I don't know if anybody has anything else to add to that, but
I would just add, like, because we are an online situation, like there's slightly different ways. It's not days, it's more hours and like academic and educational time spent doing that specifically. So that's why the breakdown feels and sounds a little different than normal brick and mortar schools. Yeah.
A very similar question from Tracy. She asked regarding the days and, how long they're at school, how many days a week, what type of flexibility is in that. For example, for working parents, could they go longer for 3 days a week to better balance their week, or does it have to be, a set number spread throughout the week?
Okay, I'll take that question. We have classes doing all sorts of things. So depending on the needs of the group. So we have a group in Tucson. She's actually chosen, she's going to do 5 days a week, a little bit shorter days. We have some that are going to do 3 days a week, a little bit longer days. And there's always the opportunity. We don't want it to, because maybe a working parent situation, we want our guides to feel free to make arrangements. We do know that our guides make arrangements to help families who might need childcare after the typical Prenda day is over. So with other activities, I mean, we have guides, we just make it work. We have a lot of guides who are just, one of our core values, figure it out. So we want to try to make it work however we can. But as an option for all families. So it looks different, like all of our classrooms. It does look different depending on the class, but if you have a certain need, we can definitely try to make that happen.
I've been joking that that a class full of insomniacs could meet from sort of midnight to 4 a.m. I haven't seen it done yet, but maybe one of these days someone will do it. There's complete flexibility in terms of the when and how. The state gives us a target of hours, of instructional hours that we're supposed to do, and we've figured that out of how to help you with it, but a lot of flexibility in terms of what that. Obviously, to do a micro school, you're going to need a group of people that feel the same way. So,
and just a little further on those, how we've organized those hours. We've this assumes like a 36-week school year. So there's still like summer break, Christmas break, fall break, spring break, like built in. And typically what we see is that wherever a micro school is, we encourage them to follow more or less the general timeline or schedule of their school system that they live in, because these kids might have other siblings in neighborhood schools and things like that will be off, and we want to help have that be convenient for parents. So yeah. Thank
you. A question maybe here for you, Katie or Kelly. the question I love is, what about PE or other extracurriculars?
Yeah, that's a great idea or a great question. So we have a shortened day, right? So that when you get home and you don't have homework, your family can decide what is beneficial. Like not everyone needs to play dodgeball for an hour. Like you might be in soccer, you might be in gymnastics, you might be doing dance, like whatever serves that child. So we encourage you to do those things with your bonus time. The other thing is that there's a lot of inherent like movement in, especially in the K2 day, like a lot of that already going on. And then as far as extracurriculars go, something that we really love about our program is we do a thing every week called a virtual expedition, where we'll bring in an adult or anyone who is super passionate about something, and it's like a big Zoom call with everyone in Prenda, and they're sharing their passion in this kind of interactive experiential thing. So the kids will get exposed to music and art. We've had people do watercolor lessons and music, like piano lessons, like on Zoom, and singing lessons. Like it's really like the sky's the limit. So we're looking to really expand that program this year, and the kids, like, they love it. So did that answer that? Kelly, do you have anything else to add about that?
No, I think you got it. I mean, I think that the two things you're looking for with extracurriculars are, like you said, Katie, exposure to lots of different things. So like maybe I would love volleyball, but no one ever told me what volleyball is. That's actually really cool. I would argue that these kids get, just by participation in this community, they get a lot of exposure to lots of things. And then the second one is diving in and really progressing, right? Like committing to something for a period of time. We talk about climbing mountains as a metaphor, but that can be anything. And so it's been really fun to liberate these kids. One, just to coach them on that mindset and how to approach things in an academic framework, but they take that home. And I've, gone to softball games of students that I've been the guide for, and I've seen them tackle, I mentioned some technology things, or welding. We had a 10-year-old that was starting to weld things with his dad. There's so many different directions this can go. And like we talked about at the very beginning, empowered learners are going to be interested in things well beyond, kind of what's in the standard for school. So I'm not saying we don't care about the standard, but it's so much bigger than that. And we want to try to help elevate that for kids, while not pretending to sort of, like somehow be able to top down control all of that. We want to create space for that. So yeah.
Something along with that, Kelly, that I just thought of is that we've had a lot of guides and collections of micro schools in an area decide to do something. Like we'll have like a cross country club, or like after school, like, hey, it's cross country club, and like we're going to meet at this park and we're going to run. So any kind of interest, like if you did have a big group of kids that was interested in volleyball, like your community of micro schools could organize that, and that would be awesome. We also have done big events, usually like student led. This is our first year. One of our students planned a big track and field day and invited all of the micro schools in the area to participate in track and field day. So sky's the limit. There's lots of options, like your own creativity and the ideas of the students, like that's where the magic happens.
She was a 6th grader, just to reiterate. Pretty cool.
Awesome. Tina asked regarding guides, if they are responsible for buying their own classroom supplies.
So when you register to be a guide and go through our training process before you get started, we give you a budget and some suggested supplies that we know you'll need in your micro school. But we leave that up to you, because like we recommend that you have an electric pencil sharpener, but instead of buying you one, like maybe you already have that. And so you want to use those funds, like it's just like suggestions, and then a lot of autonomy and choice around how you want to fund that.
Thank you. Another questioner, I've seen it a couple times now regarding high school. Katie mentioned, in the works. She said a few minutes, probably a little longer than just a few minutes, but hopefully soon we'll be able to, but we would love to offer that. A question here from Christina, and Christina, hopefully I'm summarizing this. It's a multiple part question, so hopefully I do it justice. But she asked, when a student needs more instruction on a particular skill or subject, how are we making sure that guides are prepared and equipped to support the struggling student with the curriculum? And what can parents expect for their child if they need more time to learn a skill?
Super important question. Good. So we have intentionally curated tools that make that easy for the guide. So for example, in one of our language arts curricula, Lexia, for example, if a student is like being confronted with some content that they don't understand yet, the computer will like work them through a 3-step process in the same way that like a master teacher would. So like, I'm going to give you an opportunity for this kind of complicated question. If you don't get it, I'm going to simplify it. If you still don't get it, I'm going to teach you. And then I'm going to put you back into those levels of complexity to see if you have understood what I taught. And if not, you'll kind of get stuck in this loop of like try, lesson, try, lesson. And then when the computer notices this pattern, it flags that. And then the guide is trained to go through the data in each of these programs and to see those flags. And then with built into these super powerful tools, typically like you click on the flag and then it gives you, it's like, this is what they're struggling with. This is what to say to them. Here's an activity. And so the guide doesn't have to plan that, but they can pull that student aside and do that instruction in 5 or 10 minutes and then kind of re-engage that student in their online tool. And then if that still doesn't work, if we see that that's like a pattern for kids, that this is really, really hard for them to learn like this, then we would take a step back and wonder and look at that child more holistically and say like, is this child struggling to learn? And then we can call in our SPED team and we can do a student study and evaluate what tools maybe work best for them, like really focus on what helps that student learn and try to find the accommodations that will help them learn. That was a very multiple part question. I'm sure I'm not done yet, but are there pieces that I missed?
I think you covered it well. The last part of her question, she asked, if a child was to transfer to another school or out of Prenda, do we have anything we share or communication we share regarding where they're at, if they've passed certain grades or if they're learning behind in certain subjects?
Totally. Yep. It's just like any other transferring to one brick and mortar school to another. All of that goes with them.
With the exception that it's less about letter grades, which as we talked about, we don't.
But actual content about like how they're doing and where they've been successful and where they're struggling, like totally.
Yeah. So imagine instead kind of formative data that says, they've mastered 87% of 3rd grade curriculum, with the exception of decimals were a little tricky, and here's some weak spots. So it's like pretty granular that way, and it's not reliant on sort of observation from an adult, which has a lot of variance on it. It's like these are quality tools that we feel really confident give us a good read. And then on top of that, these kind of recognized benchmarking tools where we can actually look and see progress over time. So here's where they were at the beginning of the year. Those are all the useful parts. And then we also we will check all the boxes as well. So we'll give you a transcript, but it's more for just like making sure that the file's properly filled out. It's the things that I would point people to is what we just described.
Thanks to both of you. Luke asked a great question. He says, I noticed Katie mentioned kids could stay with a certain subject as long as they were engaged in the learning. Is there a practice in place to make sure a child doesn't stay on one subject simply because they're comfortable with it?
Totally. So within that Conquer time frame, the student goes in and they click on Conquer, and what they see is a plan for their day. They have a math goal, a language arts goal, a reading goal if they want, a writing goal, like there's extra goals. So like they kind of curate their plan, and then it's a time management, essentially like task for them to learn how to manage their time and to move through these things. And so every time a student hits a goal or like says I did a goal, that's logged to the guide, like that this student completed this. So then the guide can go in and look and see like, wow, he's only completing language arts goals and he's not he's not working on math. And then you can go just have a conversation with him about that. Like, are you stuck? Like, do you not know how to log in? Like, do you not know where you're supposed to be? Do you not know what your goal is? Usually the issue there is like a lot more, it's simpler to solve than maybe we project. But yeah, it's just coaching and conversation and working through that.
And I'll add, just from experience, having seen this with the classes that I've guided, you have kids that get really excited. Oftentimes it's tied to the create mode portion of the day. So the create will give sort of the impetus to sort of like, I'm going to get my goals done. I'm going to do my math, do my English, do my reading and writing goals. Sometimes those, you'll slow down and kind of take, and sometimes you're just like, let's get through it. We don't have a strong preference on that. I mean, either way, they're mastering the concepts and moving themselves forward. I love to see them really engage in these create topics. And part of what's so empowering about the create mode projects is you picked it and you get to craft it and shape it the way you want. Now, I would say kind of the subtle one that I didn't really recognize how powerful it was when I started was the influence of a group. So you would think like me as the adult, I can tell you, learn this and learn that and learn this. That's disempowering because it's some authority figure telling you what to do. The natural human response is to just react. But when you partner with somebody and there's two of you and you see this other human with you, and you're kind of shopping through the project prompts, it's like, oh, we could do this one. I saw one of the pairs in my class was kind of like fighting all year. They were like always competing on everything, and it was just a boy and a girl that were. And then they just finally decided, like, I think I told them you have to pick somebody different each time. So they ended up working together on a project, and they spent a month writing a biography about like somebody's grandpa. I mean, they did primary research and interviews, and they worked on their chapters and all their, sources. I mean, these were like 7th graders. It was a really big biography. I was just like, this is crazy. And they just were so into it. I don't think because naturally that was interesting, but they just found this groove and it worked for a while. And then it was sort of like, okay, we're done. And they were really excited to present it. We did a showcase and they got to show their parents and just celebrate this hard work that they put in and this work that they had done. And then the very next project, they chose to work together again. And this time it was the other one kind of pushing. So it was like one of their grandparents, but now it's the other one saying, I want to do this project, which is like, we're going to name the species and come up with like a taxonomy for a new planet, and so it was all like phantasmagorical and all these weird, and there's illustrations and it was like artsy. It was just different. You could see in that they got exposed to a lot of different things, but none of it was me telling them to. It was it kind of comes naturally just by like little collisions with other people, and I think that's something that really mimics how learners are in real life too. Your friend gets really into this, this hobby, and you start to see that and say, oh, I want to try, and I'll get into it too. And so that's that happens all the time in these micro schools, just naturally.
Thank you. Christina asked about recess. She says, I saw it was part of the program. So are activities up to the guide, or are they planned, and do guides have to supply equipment, structures, etc. For recess?
Yeah, so what we typically see is just like there are breaks scheduled throughout the day, and that's up to, we don't say like you have to take this or this or this, but as a guide, you're able to say like, we need a break right now. And it's like you can walk, a lot of our, like they'll walk down to the neighborhood park if they need to like really get some energy out, or like play in a backyard, or they end up doing a lot of things like playing tag and like playing with each other instead of like on stuff, or they'll play, they'll play basketball in the driveway or any of those kinds of things. So,
well, and I just want to I think one of the most fun days I've had in a micro school is the kids for break. Every break, they decided for that week they were going to do dance party. So the kids choose a song and then they would dance. I mean, it was just as simple as that. And the kids were just, there was a lot of panting, a lot of huffing and puffing. It was a lot of energy expended, but it was so much fun, and it didn't take any fancy equipment or any structure at all. And it was still just a lot of team building and a lot of fun for those kids as they felt, that they were even in control of their recess time. So
we adults, I think, maybe overthink things a little bit sometimes, and it's fun to just see the childlike curiosity and wonder, and it can turn anything into a really fun game.
Thank you. We have a couple questions around safety, both physical and from people. So, for example, someone asked, what about if there's pools? Do we mandate fences? But then also regarding who's in the home, coming in and out, etc., while the kids are there.
Well, I'll start with the first part. I could probably do both of them, actually. So this is something that's critical to us. Obviously, we're talking about children, and there's nothing more precious. So one of the things that we knew from the very beginning was this needed to be we can't take risks here. What we basically did around physical premises safety is, fortunately, there's precedent here. People have done daycares and preschools in homes where you have other people's children coming to your home. That's now kind of an understood situation. There's actually a checklist provided by the state, and we've taken that, adapted it, and used it for our situation. So yes, pool fence. If you have guns in the home, they need to be locked. There's rules around all of the kind of the dangers for children physically to be in a home. And then people, equally critical here, right? We do not want children harmed physically or in any other way. And so what we do there is we basically look to how schools do it. There's this process where they go through and get a fingerprint card, and you're sort of registered against that database. We do that, but that wasn't enough because of our situation's different, and it was critical for us. So we actually took it multiple steps further, including looking at references and spending more time with people and through an interview process, about an independent background check that really looks this up. So we get a full picture of people, obviously doing everything we can to just take away that risk of children being harmed.
We also ask that anyone who is going to be in the home during school hours also go through the background check process, and that you need to, as a guide, disclose that to parents. And it's like best practice to introduce that person to parents, so they're part of this community. But the children are never supposed to be left alone with anyone except that guide. So our guides are really well trained in what is acceptable and what is not. And we also want the kids to know what's acceptable and what's not, and you to know as the parent what's acceptable and what's not. So if you're seeing these things, like if there's a guy that you don't recognize in the house or something, like speak up about that. Like we need to know, we need to protect these kids, like be vocal. We want to hear your voice, and we want to hear that from you.
Thank you both. Kelly, I'll ask you this one. Tina asked, how is Prenda Family different than Prenda at Home?
Yeah, so those of you who have heard about Prenda at Home, in the middle of COVID, when we recognized there was a need and people were kind of trying to figure out what to do, we quickly kind of adapted our model and made available what we called Prenda at Home. It was trying to be a self-serve kind of homeschool-based version of Prenda. And we put a lot of work into it, actually learned a lot that has been incorporated and infused into our other products, but we no longer offer that. I would say the main difference is the level of kind of support and structure that we give in the Prenda family situation. So you're not setting your kid down and we're gonna somehow do education to them, which I think parents, sometimes just get in that habit of like, that's what happened at the building. I just dropped my kid off and you guys did this thing called school to him. The hope maybe was that people could do that over the internet somehow. We just don't believe it's possible. We think that it's going to be much more human and organic than that. You're going to be part of that. And so the Prenda family parent that has some higher, maybe more explicit expectations in terms of the role that person's going to play. And in return for that, we offer a lot of support and training, and we really want you to feel totally equipped and ready to go to be able to deliver that experience. So it's similar, but with that kind of main difference. And now available on an ongoing basis. The Prenda at Home, we had kind of structured it in a stopgap measure. We had done it at a rate that we lost money on it, but we felt like at the time it was important for us to, help out, do our part. Now, as we're looking long term and trying to make smart decisions about how we run, we're still not, to be honest, completely sure that this is good economics. We've tried to pick a price point that that's going to be accessible to most people for the Prenda family. And come tomorrow night, you'll get a lot more information about kind of what that is and how that works.
Thank you, Kelly. Megan asks, and I don't know that we need to touch much more on this one. She asks, if parents stay with the children throughout the day while they're at the micro school, or do they just drop them off? Generally drop them off. I know many guides are open to having the parents come in and stay and participate. So I think it varies guide to guide, but
yeah,
we love the parents to be involved.
I'll just say one of the things that's really neat here is that as a possibility is there's complete openness, right? And as you empower that guide as the guide and as a learner, themselves, and now the kids are empowered, parents are invited to be as involved as possible. I've seen beautiful things happen in my micro schools where over the years I've done them, where you'll have a parent that just wants to come in and share love. This is what I'm interested in, and kids just eat it up. They just love it. They love to see. It's almost like there's that one day in kind of the traditional education where like you get to bring your dad or mom to work, but now, or to school with you. But now it's as often as you want. Be as involved as you want to be, and we understand that you can't be all the time, but that's to be worked out with your guide. Most people, like Tate's saying, the day to day is you're busy, you drop your kid off, or they ride their bike or scooter. We like that these are local and organic, but then from there, yeah, you can come and be part of things as much as you want.
Thank you. Katie, I'll ask this one to you. Sarah asks, are there certified teachers available to help coach the guides, not just at the beginning, but throughout the school year?
Yes, so there are certified teachers on our team that are building curriculum and kind of we're leveraging them at that high level to build a system that guides tap into. And then there's every single guide, especially our first year guides, has a direct mentor that has guided before, and they're meeting with them regularly, asking what can I do better? Where are my weaknesses as like an individual? Like how can I be more loving? How can I be more empathetic and like connect with these kids? How can I coach better? Am I really like living the Prenda values, things like that? So there's this kind of constant drip of nurturing that in the guide, and improvement and progression is totally the key.
Thank you. This one for you as well, Katie. Tina asked if our curriculum follows Arizona Common Core standards.
Short answer, yes.
Thank you. Let's see. So Daisy asks who grades the written works like essays, book reports, creative writing, etc.?
That's a super great question. So writing is a piece that we're like working super hard on right now. I'm so excited. We actually have a member of our team. We call her our writing guru. So the students write, and then once they get their writing to like a place where they're proud of it and they want to get some feedback on it, they can email it to her and ask for specific types of feedback, and she'll give them that and then email it back to them. So they have like a one-on-one mentoring with a writing expert for writing specifically. And then as far as like those other things go, we take like kind of the, is this good enough question that we usually answer with a grade. Like all of that's kind of answered in Conquer with actual data, not a judgment call by an adult that says like good enough, not good enough. But like, what do you know, like the actual formative data. So that piece is all taken care of in Conquer, which frees us up in these more collaborative and creative ventures to like be less concerned with rigor there and more concerned with like interest and passion and depth. That being said, there are constraints built into our software where the kids, instead of like the guide saying it's good. Like they check a box that says like, I solemnly swear that this is my best work. And we're constantly talking to them about like progress and achievement and daring greatly and things like that. And then any sort of feedback that they request from the guide can be given. But our guides are not like grading. They don't have to grade worksheets because there's no worksheet involved there. It's all in the computer, and it's the kids have real-time feedback. They don't have to submit something and wait for feedback.
I'll just add real quick, Tate, the level of engagement, enthusiasm, and pride that I've seen in kids making a project because they're going to show it to their class, making a project because they're going to show it to their parents at home or share it with we have this thing in our software called share it with your fans. You can send this update that includes links to, your work, if it's writing or something else you've done. It's really motivating. I never, in all my years of getting A's, and I got A's all the time, I never felt motivated or engaged the way I've seen these kids. They just care because it's like, this is me and this is my work, and I'm doing something that matters to me, as opposed to, does it fill out? I got really, really good at understanding exactly what the rubric is and doing, exactly the minimum to get the A. So
Exactly.
Thank you. Tia asked, during the Conquer portion, do they do every subject every day, or is it whatever they choose to work on for that day? Example, can they work exclusively on math for one day and English the next, or are they encouraged to do a little of every subject each day?
Great question. So Conquer is usually like an hour and a half or 2 hours, and depending on the kid, that they can get through all of the subjects every day. But we do have kids who want to split it up day to day, and they do have that freedom as long as they're working with their guide and their parents to make a plan that's going to work for them. If that works better for that individual, great. But the general recommendation is make a goal in each thing each day and move through it. And then I will also say that there's not like a bell that rings after 2 hours or an hour and a half. It's like, where is everybody? There's kind of like a group's consensus, like, okay, like we're ready to move on, not like a bell rings and you just have to like close it. It's more, we don't like those harsh endings when you're kind of in the zone learning.
Thank you. Stacy says, Kelly mentioned that schools can set their own start date. So am I able to start prior to August 17th when the governor outlined, or do I have to choose a date after that to begin?
Yeah, so the plan is start when you're ready and just choose your schedule. We can work with you on, just making sure the hours add up, and you're going to want to just communicate that obviously clearly with the families in your group, so everybody's on the same page. But yeah, we don't, because again, we're not opening campuses the way, when the governor was talking about that, it was specifically for these in-person campus settings, and that's not us.
Thank you. And similar question, Holly asked regarding start dates, but also end dates of, do we have any requirements on when the schools end and start?
You're going to work it out with your families. Oh, sorry, Katie, you can do this, but basically, no, we don't care. But the one requirement is the state gives us kind of how much instruction or how many hours you should do during the year. So we can help you figure out, like 36 weeks with the numbers we gave you earlier, or you could do 48 weeks with smaller numbers per week. So it's really as much, we've tried to just basically say as much flexibility, as many options as we can give you.
Right. We have lots of people that school year round, they want to spread it out more, take bigger breaks and things like that. And we're totally fine with that on a micro school by micro school basis. And that's just something that you need to communicate with the guide up front about. Like the guide has the power to say, like, my micro school is a 36-week program. This is our first day. This is our last day. These are our breaks. Like, is this okay with everyone? Do we want to change any of this stuff? Like to have a conversation around it, but to give parents a really clear idea of like when that school period is going to begin and end is super important. And some will choose to go year round, and that's fine. Or to take their long break in the winter here in Arizona. Some people do that. So complete flexibility there.
Thank you. Katie, for you as well. Shannon asked, who makes the curricula decisions for Prenda?
You're looking at her. So we have an awesome student team, and anytime we're constantly evaluating the effectiveness of our curriculum, changing out tools, finding new tools, creating a system instead of like a one size fits all, like this is our curriculum. We call it conquer time curation, where there's a conversation about what the best tools are for you. Anytime we have parents or guides say like, can you look at this curriculum? Like we take a deep dive into it. We ask the questions like, is it mastery based? Is it self-paced? Is it standards aligned? We have to, it has to meet certain standards to be considered. And then we'll do experiments with it. We'll get kids on there and get their feedback. And then also with the learning model. So as a parent, every month you'll have the opportunity to go in and log your bonus time in the parent portal. And during that time, you'll also take like a 2-second survey where you just tell us how happy you are. And then in that, you'll also have the opportunity, if you want, to give us any feedback. Like, I'm not happy with the science curriculum, or there's gaps in this other thing. Like I'm not seeing enough like rigor over here or enough freedom on this side. Like you can give us that feedback, and we're probably going to reach out to you and like get more context and like really understand why you're thinking those things, kind of what you're seeing from your student in your micro school, and then respond to that.
Thank you, Katie. Lori asks, what if a micro school can only find 4 kids? Can they create a school while still looking for more students?
Super good question. So we do have a five student limit, or minimum, sorry. So when you have 4 students, you can totally start meeting together and doing that, but we don't compensate the guide until there's 5 students. And if you are meeting, if you have 5 students and someone moves and so suddenly you have 4, we give you like a buffer period. And the reason that we do this is because when you sign up for a Prenda Micro School, part of the package is that you're signing up for this inherently like interactive, collaborative experience that is really hard to accomplish when there's 4 kids or 3 kids or 2 kids or 1 kid, right? So we feel like through our experience, like 5 to 10 is like this sweet spot. Really like 8 to 10 is wonderful, but like you can do it with 5. So we allow 5.
And I think I'm just going to add right there that, if you have 4 kids and you're not sure, are there other families that are interested? We've got a ton of families that are interested. And even in this day where we just can't all meet together, I did online Zoom info sessions for some families in Tucson, and they're building a classroom right now. And they've got about 5 kids enrolled, and they really want to get a full micro school going. So I was happy to join them by Zoom and talk about Prenda. So we're happy to help you as you try to grow a micro school. We're happy to do info sessions and provide those resources. We've got tons of ideas on how to get the word out that you're starting a micro school. So definitely don't let that scare you off if you're not sure you can have 8 to 10 kids.
And also I'll add that as a guide, you can say like when your class is full. Like if you feel like your capacity as a guide is full at 6, you can say like I have a student cap of 6. It has to be between 5 and 10, but that's totally up to you. A lot of our guides actually have maybe like a younger, like a not like below 5, like a not school age child at home with them. And so while they don't count as a member of like your enrolled micro school, it's still another body in the home. So they might want to do 9. So that's just totally up to the guides.
Thank you. A related question, Stacy asks, if my children are in 1st, 3rd, and 6th, can I choose to be a guide for 3rd through 6th, but also enroll my 1st grader in my own class, knowing it will be more difficult, and then count all 3 children toward the total number enrolled?
Yes, you can do that. Absolutely. It will be challenging, but people do it all the time. There's pros and cons to it, really. When you have a younger student, there's some like innate like mentorship that happens with older students and younger students, which is really beautiful. But younger students require a lot more attention from the guide. They're not as autonomous. They're often not independently reading yet, which makes it difficult for them to access the content independently. So that's why we like to have kindergarten through 2nd grade, where you really have a lot of attention on reading to get you to that foundation where you can fully access like the whole world of content as much as you are interested in doing.
Thank you. A great question here from Shannon. She asks, what happens if a student exhibits negative behaviors like hitting or other forms of aggression? And how do we support guides with something like that to ensure that the learning of the other students isn't impacted and all are safe?
Super important question. So at the beginning of a micro school, they'll have, we call it the boundaries house, where they talk about how we're in our micro school, and that's totally a privilege to be here together. And in order for everyone to learn and feel safe, like there are some ground rules here that Prenda sets, like no physical violence, no teasing, no bullying, no inappropriate technology use. But aside from that, we really let the class decide what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. So there's a lot of buy-in and like group consensus around like, yes, like we all agree. They actually sign a piece of paper, they define it, and then sign a piece of paper that like, I'm going to commit to doing this. In some situations, we have classes that want to say like, if you have trouble with this, like there's like, you have to do 20 push-ups or something like that. Like they'll build in kind of like results like that the kids are thinking of. It's not like a top down, like you don't get your sticker, like there's no sticker charts in Prenda. So, but if there's a situation where that does happen, if there's violence, it's like reported to all of the parents to know like what happened there. But we really, instead of just like reacting to that, we really seek to understand the root cause of that problem and coach students on self-control and self-government and help them understand why that was wrong and like what they can do differently and how they can take a break and get calm and things like that. If that's an ongoing problem and it's not going away and it's disrupting the learning environment, making people feel unsafe or too distracted even, we can ask that the student like converts almost into like Prenda family temporarily, where they will do their academics from home for a short time. And then our most sincere desire is that student can rejoin, get it together, rejoin that micro school and keep going and monitor their own behavior and be safe in that space. But if it's not a fit and that just happens over and over again, we like the safety of those other kids is our top priority. And so we'll just ask that student move to Prenda family permanently.
Thank you. Tina asks, can guides give direct instruction? And she says, for example, each morning she meets with her girls and gives them instruction or a more in-depth explanation on certain subjects. What is that like for our guides in our micro schools?
Good question. So what you wouldn't see in a Prenda micro school is like, okay, I'm going to give this lesson on addition, or like we're going to practice these flashcards together, because that negates like the individualized nature. Like maybe, you have a 6th, 7th, and 8th grader in that situation, like half those kids got that, like that's a waste of their time, and you're actually robbing them of their like freedom to like push towards their learning frontier. So that's why we don't do that. But you can totally share your passions with them. Like, I am just learning about astronomy right now, and like this is like, a brief, not like a sit down 45-minute lesson about what you're learning, but like share your passion. And you can also do it by invitation, like during a break or something like that. You could say like, hey, if anyone's interested, like I'm going to do like a little demo over here of like woodworking or like something that I'm working on. And you can come if you want. It's an invitation.
Thank you. Tia asks, are guides trained to notice if kids are setting goals that are too easy and maybe don't match their ability levels, and how is that handled?
Absolutely. So it's really obvious if given like a 90 minute to 2 hour break, if they're done in 10 minutes, like then the guide notices that they're just like distracted or not doing, like they can go visit with that student and ask like, wow, like you finished that goal in 10 minutes. Like, what does that tell you about your goal? And like help them realize like, well, maybe I have more time to learn here and I could set a more ambitious goal and kind of get to the root of the problem there about why they wouldn't set a more ambitious goal. But the guide would never mandate like, okay, like this is your goal, but there's coaching. And also parents can be involved in that situation too. Like a lot of times, like there's like a discrepancy between like what the student demonstrates to the guide and what the parent really knows that they're capable of. So like you can just have conversations and work that out. Again, like it's so much different than a traditional model where like there's a teacher and she's responsible for like content delivery to like 30 kids sometimes, where this guide, like their main role, like they don't have to lesson plan, they don't have to grade, they don't have to do any of that stuff. And there's only 8 to 10 kids. Like there's a lot of bandwidth there to nurture and love and connect. And actually that's a huge piece of the mentoring program that the guides are on, like doing ongoing, is learning how to coach and learning how to talk to kids and help them find their motivation and ask questions and things like that. So we really focus on that. And the vast majority of issues that come up like this can be handled through simple conversations and relationship.
Thanks again. There was a question on what is the ELA and science curriculum?
Yeah, great question. So we have a variety of tools there. It's like a really broad question. We like Lexia. You can look at that. There's a kindergarten through 5th grade program and then a 6th through 8th version of it. And that goes through grammar and spelling and reading comprehension and vocabulary and things like that. Like it's a really holistic program where they get all of that in one spot. We also use programs called No Red Ink and Light Sail for grammar and reading comprehension, vocabulary and writing. For more advanced, like older kids, we use Treasure Hunt Reading for reading. That's the thing that we built in-house. And did I answer the question? I forgot. ELA. Oh, and science. That was the other thing. So we really love, I don't know if maybe some of you guys have heard of this. It's called Mystery Science. It's kind of like an interactive online experience where there's Dr. Doug and he's walking you through kind of a mystery or a science question, and it's like really interactive. So he'll give you a little question, he'll ask you to notice things, and you talk together as a group and you do an experiment, but it's kind of like scaffolded or moderated by Dr. Doug. And that's really fun. And we're actually building at the 6th or 8th level. It's like right now, like super free, like what are we interested in? Like how can we explore these ideas and do experiments that the kids build? But we are currently in the process of building out a 6th through 8th grade standards-based science approach.
Thank you. Let's see, Shannon asked, do guides get paid for required time meeting with other Prenda staff outside of the student time?
Guides are compensated for hours they spend with kids. So short answer, no, but also there isn't a lot of mandated like meetings and things like that. Like there's a few things, but it's not like not like you get in trouble if it doesn't work for your schedule. There's like a lot of flexibility and conversation around that. Meeting with your mentor is really important, but it's not like we have a lot of guides for like begrudgingly showing up to meetings. It's like we try to make all of these things like super enriching and like a service to you. And the number one things our guides tell us is like guiding's great. It's fun to be with the kids, but like overall, I have grown so much as a person because all of these things that I'm asked to come to, like Zoom calls and mentoring and things like that, they are so powerful and so enriching. And the idea that they are even free is like if you think about it, it's like technically like in the normal world, like you would actually pay to attend these events. They're so valuable. So just the idea that you're not paid to necessarily be there, it's kind of like a mindset switch. Like this is inherently valuable. It's not a waste of my time.
Oh, and I just want to second that, Katie. Like it has been just a joy for me to be involved with the Prenda team and just the events that we've held, for lack of a better term, professional development, and hear from these speakers and learn these things. Like I mentioned, it's even changed how I interact with my kids on a day-to-day basis, in my own family and my parenting, and so we've got some great resources out there that are available to our guides.
Thank you, Sarah and Katie. Mary asked, and probably bringing this up a little higher level. So she asked, if a parent is okay with driving the distance, why do some guides choose to only accept students in their direct communities? So maybe, Katie, can you speak a little on the process for students and guides to be matched?
Can you say the beginning part of that question? I just really want to make sure I'm clear on it.
She says if the parent is okay with driving, why do some guides choose only to accept in their direct community?
Oh, if we said that, we probably miscommunicated that there aren't really guides that choose to do that. Like any student, no matter where they live, if the parent is willing to drive.
And I think that may have came from a different experience or conversation. But yeah, so what's the process on that?
I was talking about riding scooters and riding bikes. Typically that's the parent. Yeah. So what you'll find is most parents don't want to do that drive. They're going to find something close, but definitely we have a lot of people that shop around, look around, find a micro school that's a distance away. And then, given if there's space and a fit and mutual kind of link up there, you like that guide, they like you, it can work under any circumstances. So there's no requirement around it has to be local. It's just that's what ends up happening usually.
Kelly, I'll ask you this one. Tina asked, do we have a dress code?
No, unless you want one. So every micro school gets to decide. I had a long conversation with a bunch of fourth graders about whether you have to wear shoes or not. They said shoes, no, but socks, yes. Because I guess toes were disgusting. I don't know. It was a funny conversation. But that was me in my class. I mean, I have every micro school is going to be different, and there's going to be a different vibe. Katie described beautifully this kind of process of setting expectations. And if a group said it's business formal, it's suits and ties, and dresses, you could do that, assuming the parents were okay with it. We're like, for me, that's I don't actually have a strong stance on it. It's just what works for your community.
And if you have a strong stance on that as a parent, communicate that to your guide, that these are important things to your family, and get a conversation going around that so that you can create an environment that's comfortable for everyone to learn in.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll find whatever's important to you will also be important to other people. And we're going to try to get better over time at kind of facilitating matchmaking along multiple fronts, right? So we don't have an easy way to see that on our website right now, but like Katie said, just bring it up and be open about what's important to you.
Yes. Going back to the guides and the time they spend, outside of their school hours per se, someone was asking how much time generally is it outside of school or, and other things outside of their micro school hours?
Well, I can go ahead and grab this. There's no lesson planning. Everything is provided. Like you say, you've got all the materials and all of those resources, and ultimately maybe just planning, like I think Katie mentioned, maybe like a week of activities, and the kids are, I think, really involved in that as well. So I know some of the micro schools I've been in, the guide is asking the kids, okay, so what's the project we want to do, Tuesday this week? Like they're really involved in that, but there is really very little outside planning time. And then, like we've mentioned, just these awesome opportunities that we have for growth together as a Prenda team and as a team of guides, and that the guides have a Slack channel they're on together. So there's just a lot of collaboration and communication that way, but there's not a lot of planning outside of those typical Prenda class hours.
Yeah, we actually pulled this on our guides to see what guides were doing, because some go above and beyond and feel like they really do need to do more. Especially if you're guiding K2, I would say there's a little bit more prep time, because the 5-year-olds are not going to plan the activity. We don't have that expectation of them developmentally. So you can expect a little bit more. But on average, I would say 1 to 2 hours, maybe a week. But it's not necessary. Our goal is that you don't. And if you are spending a lot of time as a guide doing that, our hope is that you tell us so that we can build you a tool to solve that for everyone. And it's not a perfect program yet. It's not like a pristine, we're working on it, and we're listening to you and trying to make changes and adapt things to serve you as a guide that serves, things that serve kids and things that serve parents and families as wholes. Just trying to make sure we answered that.
By far the most important thing is how you show up with the kids. It's not about who can, come up with the cutest, whatever. Yeah. It's about being there and connecting and Katie talked about our core values. It's such a huge portion of what we're doing is really this focus on how to be and how to engage with other humans. We
would much rather put if you're going to spend extra time, we would rather you put that into personal development and reading books that will help you become a strong leader and learn how to mentor and coach, rather than cutting things out to make a cute display or craft or something like that. It's not in traditional teaching. I know teachers spend a lot of after hours time laminating things and cutting things and doing all sorts of that kind of stuff. Our activities are not meant to be that intense. They're really organic, grassroots. What do we have around us? What can we do? I will say on materials, for our mystery science, there are the kids choose the activities. There's a huge library of these science lessons and experiments, and they'll have little materials that you need to provide as a guide, or you can ask, I'm talking about 3 toothpicks, a cardboard, like a piece of cardboard, and like some tin foil, like things you probably already have around your house. But we totally engage, like we're not gonna like give a list and like give you tin foil and toothpicks, because we're not in charge of like what activities your kids pick. It's gonna be like really individualized. But you are totally welcome to ask parents for donations of supplies or a small like materials fund, like if you as a guide want that or need that. But we do our best to provide you with the vast majority of what you need, be it funds or just keeping things simple.
Great, thank you. The next question here is, what kind of anti-bias training and support does Prenda provide? Does Prenda have anti-bias views in the company mission and values and in expectations for their micro school guides?
Yeah, great idea. Great question. This is especially relevant nowadays, but it has always been relevant, right? We need to be looking hard at how we are, and you've heard a lot from us already on this webinar about just what does it mean to be an empowered learner? What does it mean in these core values? So step number 1 is, we say empowered learners, full stop, right? Like there's no bias in that. It is, this is something that human beings are capable of, and we honor that with almost a reverence that extends beyond, any of the traditional classifications that humans might slip into seeing in each other. So definitely a universal message there. We work hard on helping promote that. I think the biggest, the place where we find the most biases in ourselves is that very first value that we talked about, start with heart. Because what we're doing there is we're really working hard, and this is trained and coached and practiced in life, is looking at our own thoughts and mind frame with respect to another human being. And it's fascinating and unlocking to be able to apply this framework to any human being in your life, but anyone you interact with. What do I see when I interact with you? And if it's anything less than a human being of infinite worth and infinite potential, there's a problem, right? And so then the question is, well, why does that problem exist? Yeah, giving yourself the grace to, of course you're gonna be subpar on all of these things, but to work on that and to actively take out those obstacles and those blocks and those biases that are preventing you from being able to see someone as a true, valuable human being with great potential. So that's huge to us. It's been there from the beginning, and it's been really fascinating to just talk to people and engage the stories that you'll get. We're doing all this work for these kids, and there's all these things, and we'll have adults come to us and just say, my marriage got better, or this like difficult like relationship in my community got better, because you're starting to apply these frameworks of how humans interact with each other. We really do believe that this can have compound effects at scale. And you imagine a whole world where everyone's asking themselves these difficult questions, and we believe that things definitely get better in that scenario.
And I just want to add one thing, that what I also love is, in this day and age, I talk to a lot of parents who are so concerned with our culture, and there's bullying and just the effect that has on kids, that kids are not wanting to, they're afraid. They don't want to show who they are, and maybe everybody's different. We're all different, and we're quirky in our own way, and kids don't want to be their whole self and their genuine self, and they're afraid to show that. What I think is great is, in a Prenda class, I think one of my favorite stories is a boy who had a learning difficulty, dealing with dyslexia and dysgraphia, and he felt safe enough to talk to the other kids in his class about why reading was a struggle for him, and about how his brain learned a little differently. And I just think that that's so cool for a kid to be able to come up to a group of kids and to share that. And there's such power in that, and the other kids learning to understand and then support and encourage, and not be this competitive thing, and this thing where this boy would have been afraid to share that in a group. in a maybe traditional setting of 30 kids where everybody's kind of, competing with each other. So it's just been really cool to see the things happening in Prenda classrooms.
That concept of foundation of trust, which is another of our core values, is really an extension of Start with Heart, right? If everyone's trying to start with heart and you believe that about the other people you're with, amazing things are possible. Conversations can be had that can't otherwise exist. I mean, we see this in the world, like adults aren't able to actually talk to each other, and getting a group of kids to be able to do that, to be vulnerable and show up with like respect and understanding each other. Those are some of the most beautiful moments I've seen too, Sarah. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you all. Blanca asks, is after school care allowed if the guide is willing?
Yeah, you can totally work that out with your guide. And there's other solutions that the communities come up with too, not just the guide providing it. So totally solutions there.
Thank you. All right, I think we caught up on all the questions finally. I do feel like I may have missed some. I think there were so many that Facebook stopped showing me all of the comments. So I really apologize if we missed yours. We will go back through and try and make sure, everything was covered and got an answer. If you do have more questions, feel free to comment here or message us on social media. You can also reach out to us through our website and talk to our amazing support teams, to get answers to all of your other questions. But Kelly, Katie, Sarah, any final words from any of you?
I'm just laughing. We've been on for 2 hours. Is anybody still watching? This is amazing.
There's a lot.
Thank you for the questions. And this has been just a blast. I love to see the energy and the passion. I mean, this like ferocity that parents bring to like look out for their kids and want to do what's right for kids. It's nothing short of inspiring. And so kudos to you up late doing this research, and yeah, hopefully we can help you.